Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to your HR for UK webinars. Today, we are going to be looking at re-engaging your employees in the workplace. We know that we have had some really tough times, and it's now when we're starting to get back into the office where we need to start getting that engagement in so that you can have your A team in your business. But before we get down to all the nitty-gritty, let's just go through the usual. I know I have a lot of new people joining us today. So for those of you who this webinar is new, welcome, and we're going to be with you. You're going to be with us for the next hour while we sort of share some fantastic knowledge and information with you. But before we get started, while I go through the usual sort of introductories, while we let more people join on, I can see there are a couple more attendees joining us as we're starting. But let's just have a quick look. Who are we? HR for UK provider for HR and employment law services. We also offer payroll and pensions, as well as health and safety services for SMEs. We've got over 30 years of experience, and we've got some fantastic 5-star reviews. But of course, don't just take what I'm saying on what our customers and clients say about us. I would welcome you to come and join me and have a look on my website to see what our clients say about us, because I can say what I want to about what HR for UK services provide, but what really matters is what our clients say about us. So have a look at our website, www.hrforuk.com, and have a look at those 5-star reviews. So of course, you've got me this afternoon. I am Angela Clay. I'm an HR and employment law solicitor, but I'm also the managing director of HR for UK, and I'm responsible for HR for UK's role as a leading professional HR services for UK businesses across the UK. For those of you who have been joining my webinars since we started back in April 2020, gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago when I started. But my vision then was to make sure that you survived the crisis. But of course, we are now coming out of the coronavirus crisis. But my vision remains to keep your company legally compliant by sharing knowledge and offering you clear, professional, practical advice and support. And that just doesn't have to be about the legalities of things. Of course, as we know today, we have got a guest speaker, Andy Goram, who's joining me, who's going to be sharing some fantastic ways that you can re-engage your employees in the workforce. So today we're going to be looking at how company behavior has changed and has been influenced over the last 18 months. We're also going to have a look at the engagement triangle and understand the critical drivers behind employee engagement, and we're going to get an introduction. I'll put my teeth back in. An introduction to the 4 enablers of employee engagement, hear what each one does and how they can be applied in your business, so that you can reap the benefits on focusing on employee engagement, whether it is a complete restart or whether it is a bit of going back and revisiting what you already do. Our webinars are only as good as they are for what you want, but more importantly, it's about the questions that you ask. For those of you who are familiar with the GoToWebinar, you will know that on the right-hand side, you can use the chat box to ask questions. And please do ask those questions, because if there is one person wanting to ask that question, there's probably at least another half a dozen people in the room who have that same question on their mind. So please do ask those questions, and we will come round to those at the end of the webinar. Of course, the webinar is being recorded, so it will be sent out to you, and it will be available for you to listen to again if there are things that you want to go over again, or if for whatever reason you have to leave us early to go and do something else. Of course, you will be able to come back to it. And of course, today Andy has prepared some lovely PowerPoint slides which are available on the handouts. Again, if you have a look on the right-hand side of your panel, you will be able to find those handouts. But don't worry if you can't get to download those, they will be sent out to you separately. So again, let's just have a quick look at what we're going to be doing today. We now know that the UK is fully opened and people are returning to work. albeit in various ways. Some businesses are still working remotely. Some of them still need to decide and figure out how they're going to be going back to work, because of course we know that the landscape has changed. And if we're really honest, it doesn't matter where our businesses are and what shape they are in, there is a real need to re-engage your employees, because there has been a long period of disruption. It doesn't matter whether you have been literally hanging on for survival, or whether you have seen your organization go through a boom period. Everyone has a job. Every business owner has a job to re-engage their workforce to enable them to be able to move forward. As I said, now more so than ever, having an engaged workforce is absolutely vital, not only for employees' well-being, but also for your organization. Because when there is uncertain times, workers often crave that sense of purpose, and quite often distract themselves by putting themselves into work to kind of forget about the anxieties that they may be feeling, and throw themselves into work, which will give them something positive to be able to focus their energies on. For starters, you know, we have many workforces that may not be working together anymore. They might not physically be in the same office. They might be far flung across the UK, where they are now trying to do their work. That does not mean that they can't stay together, and communication is key. It also doesn't mean that recipients don't need to get feedback. It's much easier when you are in that face-to-face close contact environment, where you can receive that casual feedback and in, you know, social interactions in the workplace. Of course, it's not always that easy when you are doing it online. But as I said early on, you know, these are things that we are going to be covering today, what we're going to do, how you're going to do that. And as I'm going to be presenting, handing over to you, this month I have Andy Goram as my guest speaker. Andy is the owner of Bizjuicer, fantastic name. I love that name of a company. And he has a strategic brand offering employee engagement consultancy. Andy has had a successful corporate career, in marketing career for over 25 years, where Andy decided to set up I'm going to put my teeth in again, Bizjuicer, to help create that stickier business from the inside out, connecting and aligning businesses' purpose and proposition to their people to produce more sustainable profits. Andy has been supporting businesses across multiple sectors, including leisure, hospitality, retail, and medical services. Andy is on a single mission to ensure that great brands who create an emotional connection with their customers also bring their teams along the same journey, reap the benefits of that for both parties. So that and both parties. That's it from me. I'm going to hand you over to the expert, who is now going to take you on his journey. And over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much, Angela. Let's see if I can get the tech to work. Hopefully you can see the slides. And I'm going to pick up on a number of things that Angela has mentioned today. But first of all, thanks for inviting me. Any chance I get to talk about engagement and geek out on this stuff, I grab with both hands because I love it. Okay, so let's get on with today. And I genuinely am delighted to be here to talk about this topic, because it's something I've been deeply passionate about throughout my whole career, during all those 25 years in corporate life, and now as a consultant dedicated to helping people lead what I hope will be more fulfilling work lives and releasing more of the untapped good stuff that lies often dormant in the people within businesses. So nowadays, I spend most of my time trying to help companies become, as Angela said, sticky from the inside by helping them connect their purpose, vision, and values to the people inside. And when I talk about stickier businesses, I mean businesses that are engaging places to work, that retain more of their talent, who thrive in that environment that's created there, and who end up being more productive and more innovative, which in turn means that more customers love what the business does and end up being advocates for them. If you like, it's the absolute manifestation of that well-known service profit chain. Now, there's a famous and worrying statistic that Gallup published some time ago, and that's what inspired my mission to create these stickier businesses. And it said only 41% of employees surveyed stated that they knew and understood what their company stood for and why it was different from the competition. So that means potentially nearly 2/3 of your people don't know why you do what you do, why it's different from the rest, and then so don't fully understand the role that they play in the company's success. Now, I feel that's just such a waste of the bags of latent talent that sits in many businesses just waiting to be switched on. So as Angela said, I'm on a bit of a mission to help businesses turn the lights on behind the eyes of their employees and light those fires within them, because I've seen firsthand the really powerful effect that can have on people, teams, businesses, and of course profits. And that's why I'm really chuffed to be here today about speaking about engagement, especially after the last 18 months that we've had. So if it's okay, I'd like to start by setting some context for some of the many things people may be facing into today, and then tell a brief and probably familiar story that sets the topic of engagement up nicely, I think. So the last 18 months has been challenging for everyone on so many levels, personal and business. And I've grouped some of the most common business challenges of this time period that I see into these 6 scenarios. Now, not all of them are about survival, but pretty much every business has faced into one or more of these 6 things, and all of which will have had a direct and in some cases profound effect on the people within your business, and in some way affected their own levels of engagement. I mean, do any of these reflect your own situation recently? Have you parked your values or even acted in a way that's opposite to what they say just to survive? Have you diversified and as a result have asked even more of your employees in these challenging times? Have you had a boom period and in taking advantage of that opportunity been extremely task focused to cope with the demand and therefore maybe neglected some of your efforts around communication? Have you been forced to lay people off and ended up putting even more pressure on those who are left behind? Have you hired a bunch of new people but been so busy you can't onboard them properly and get to tell them the story of your business and the important role that they play in that? Or maybe you've just seen things or behaviors over the last 18 months that you don't like, or even things that you do like and want to change and make things feel better or more permanent. Whatever your situation, as the country begins to wake up and business cranks back into an albeit different gear, you have an opportunity, even duty, to re-engage with your people. And if we ever needed a wake-up call on the effect of the last 18 months and what that's had on employee engagement, a new survey from Korn Ferry found that a huge 82% of employees say they plan to quit their job over the next 6 months, with a third saying they'll quit even if they don't have another job to go to. Well, why? Well, that same survey said that 36 people said the number one reason was that the pandemic had allowed them to reevaluate what they wanted out of work. And a similar 32% said that they just didn't like the company's culture anymore. There's some pretty scary numbers. And so with all that in mind, I thought it would be helpful to go over some of the fundamentals of engagement in an attempt to help you maybe work through your own specific challenges. But let me start by telling a brief but famous story. Look, I make no apologies for telling the story. Many of you may be familiar with it, but I think it sets up today's topic in a nice and succinct way. So back in '62, President JFK visited NASA for the very first time. And during the tour of his facility, he made contact with a janitor who was carrying a broom down the hallway. Now, the president approached the janitor and casually asked him what he did for NASA. And the janitor smiled and proudly replied, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." Now, just take a moment to reflect on this. The janitor knew something that many of us struggle with: the purpose of his work. He kept the building clean so that the scientists, engineers, and astronauts could really focus on their mission of putting man on the moon. They didn't have to worry about spending their time emptying rubbish bins or cleaning bathrooms or hallways. He did that for them. He saw where his contribution fit in the whole organization. He connected his purpose with theirs. And this for me is one of the fundamental pillars of true engagement, aligning people behind a vision and helping them really understand their part in delivering that. Now, before we get into how we can get better at employee engagement, let's take a look at what's at stake. Like, firstly, come back to that waste of latent potential that I mentioned right at the start. A staggering 64% of employees state that they are capable of doing and taking on more than they are currently asked to at their place of work. And disappointingly, we're fourth in the G7 in terms of productivity. In 2019, we were 17% below the average of the rest of the G7, and this has slipped nearly 2% in the last few years. But the rewards and benefits associated with the increase in productivity are there if we can just up the levels of engagement, and they really are worth having. When you look at businesses who are in the top quartile of engagement terms versus bottom quartile, there are some huge benefits on offer. These businesses typically have twice the levels of annual net profit, that they achieve 2.5 times the annual revenue growth, and they have 12% higher customer advocacy, which means customers are cheaper to process and keep. They spend more and are far more likely to recommend you to others. These top quartile companies also get 18% more productivity, and this comes from happy, engaged people too, not from rinsing them out and squeezing them dry. In more engaged companies, 59% of employees say they are also more creative at work. Now, with levels of competition higher than ever, innovation and creativity is something businesses are crying out for. When was the last time you had time to ask your employees for their ideas? And the sad fact is that the vast majority have never been asked or aren't engaged enough to share them, even if they were. And in these more engaged businesses, there's 40% less turnover. Now, when you think of the cost it takes to recruit a replacement and train them up is something like 1/3 or 2/3 of the salary you end up advertising on average, that's a huge opportunity to realize. But the sad thing is, the numbers of engaged employees haven't really moved much in a couple of decades. So what's going wrong? Well, let's just remind ourselves of the basics and take a look at the engagement triangle. Now, the purpose of the engagement triangle is really to act as a planning guide when trying to engage your people and enable your desired company culture to flourish. After all, engagement for me is about encouraging a genuine willingness to contribute more to the success of the business. And it starts at the top of that triangle with why. Now, to influence people to do something, to do anything, you need to connect with their personal motives. You can inspire and motivate people by linking your purpose, vision, and objectives with those of your teams. Help them understand what's in it for them. Put them in the middle of the story. Show them how they contribute to that vision. And the higher the purpose, the deeper the meaning, the more engagement you will get. Now, once you know what inspires and motivates people and how that links to your objectives, as a leader, you need to provide or create an environment that sets people up for success. Now, I think the days of command and control management being a successful approach are pretty much done now. Today, people thrive when given the right tools and the fair amount of autonomy just to get on with the job. And this is what empowerment really looks like. Inspire them, create the right environment, give them the tools, and get out of the way. When people have a clear purpose and vision that they can personally relate to, and when they have the means and support necessary to do a good job, then you can start focusing on the tangible outcomes. So that what refers to the outcomes of the work that people do, the desired results. Now, this could be products, services, or the experiences you provide for customers. With the right why and the right how, your people often figure out what the right what is. And engaged teams will get you sustainable results and outcomes. But the sustainability comes from the focus of providing the why and the how first. So If that's a simple framework for planning any engagement strategy or cultural program, what are the specific factors that are proven to enable employee engagement? Well, look, I'm a volunteer for an organization called Engage for Success, and we seek to champion the cause for creating more awareness of the benefits of employee engagement and what it takes to encourage that within business. Now, this movement started back in 2010 after the government at the time asked for an investigative report to be undertaken to look into what this employee engagement thing was. Did it really bring any benefits? And if so, how do you go around achieving them? And so was born the McLeod report, written by David McLeod and Nita Clark, who subsequently founded and set up Engage for Success. Anyway, the detailed report, compiled from data from over 1,500 companies and is available on the engageforsuccess.org website, highlighted and proved 4 enablers of engagement, which I'd like to share with you today in the hope that they can help you create a more engaged workforce and reap some of the benefits available to all as a result. Now, the first enabler of employee engagement is strategic narrative. This is the authentic and honest story of your business, past, present, and future. And it's strategic in nature as it needs to give clear direction and show where your organization is changing or responding to changes in the external environment. Now, when telling this story, you need to show what will be different, how it will impact your people, and how they're going to know the change has been successful. You need to make sure you show your people the landscape around them and the horizon in front of them. Help them picture themselves in the new landscape. You need to keep it structured and pithy so that you and they can remember it firstly, and secondly, they can tell it repeatedly and easily. And don't forget, this is a story. It needs a beginning, a middle, and a future. And it's not your personal story, but that of the organization and the people within it. It's a story with a clear message and purpose, a story that helps your people feel like they belong in the organization and helps them want to stay. A story that involves your people in the next chapter, a story that brings meaning and purpose to people's working lives. So that story needs to be compelling, authentic, personal to them, and repeatedly told and referred to by visible, empowering leaders. So people really see the commitment and consistency and understand its importance when they tell the story themselves. And the second, and equally if not more important enabler, is engaging managers. Now, this is a need to have leaders, managers, and people who will and are equipped to take the time to get to know their people as individuals and who are capable of creating a sense of team. I spoke to a guest on my podcast, Sticky from the Inside, just a few months ago, who told me a lovely story that emerged whilst researching the topics of employee mattering and significance. He came across a team who could not speak highly enough of their manager. She was really always there for them, had their back totally, pushed them to achieve, and they felt she really knew them. They were an incredibly engaged and highly productive team. And my guest felt compelled to meet this lady. Now, when he sat down with her to find out why she'd been so successful at engaging her team and creating such a bond with them, she was almost embarrassed to reveal her secret. She reached deep into her handbag and pulled out a notebook, a really well-used notebook. And she said, look, I wanted to get to really know my team, as I know how important that is, but I have a terrible memory. So whenever I'd had a conversation with people about home stuff or personal life or family, I just made a little note in my book. And then the next time I had a conversation with, I could check it and I could check in with them to see how the wife's operation had gone or whether Tommy had had his exam results yet. And she didn't need to use it often now, but it just got her into the habit of talking to the team and really getting to know them. Now, I love this story because it shows that the simplest things can make a huge impact in this area. I've worked with manufacturers in factories before, and the difference we saw in engagement just from encouraging the office managers to walk the floor and start to chat and get to know the operatives, it was huge. So don't underestimate the power of making feel someone like they matter. Everyone likes to feel significant and seen, and yet sadly not everyone is. But as managers, they're not always there for just the nice things. They need to be able to manage the paradoxes of giving people focus and scope to support and stretch. Engaging managers also don't walk on by poor practice or behavior because they realize the damage that that can do. They offer feedback in the moment with both candor and empathy, but it's always coming from a good place of wanting and needing the employee to grow and develop. Engaging managers are also comfortable showing vulnerability. As humans, we have an innate need to help others, but when we sense that someone doesn't need our help, we instinctively disengage and move on to support someone that does. If you're a manager who tries to portray that you have all the answers and shows that you don't need help, don't be surprised if you have low levels of engagement. Engaging managers ask for help when they need it. They involve their people. They are comfortable in saying that they don't have all the answers, and they benefit greatly from doing so. The third enabler is employee voice. And this may sound a little bit Ron Seal, but this is about recognizing that communication in a business is two-way. This is about making employees feel like they really have a voice, that their opinions and views matter, from how their job is done to the way the business works, or being given the opportunity to share their ideas on how improvements can be made. But if you are going to give them a voice, you have to listen, and things have to be seen to be happening, or at least help people understand why they might not be. The biggest failing I see in businesses running engagement surveys is the lack of action seen to be taken on the results of that survey, and a lack of communication of what is or isn't going to be done as a result. I mean, I see it all the time in the verbatim comments when people say things like, it doesn't really matter what I say, nothing ever gets done, I'm not sure why I bother responding. Honestly, if you're better off not running the survey in the first place if you're not prepared to act on the results, and importantly, feedback on the reasons for not doing certain things too. Enforcing and reinforcing the point that employees have a voice in the business can also start from day one. Whenever I'm working with a client to build an onboarding or induction program, I always encourage them to include a request or an invitation from the CEO or the MD at the top of the business to all new employees to feed back to them directly over the course of their first 90 days, specifically asking them to feedback on how the company promise really matches up to reality. Now, those first 90 days for a business are a gift. That employee has no baggage and hasn't been sucked into any of the rituals or behaviors that all businesses have. They are a fresh look at what it's really like to be part of that company, and so can offer clean insights into what's working and what isn't, allowing the business to take action to accentuate and celebrate the good and improve the bad. This one action also sets the tone and sends the message that having a voice here is encouraged and needed. Ultimately, it shows that people are part of the solution in the business, not a problem to solve. And the final enabler is organizational integrity. Now, this is all about the state of the say-do gap in the business. Are the values on the mouse mat and the wall mural reflected in the mindset, attitude, and behaviors of everyone in the business? Here, the company has a set of values that adds value to employees, helps them achieve its objectives, and acts as a guide to the way we should all behave to reach those objectives and ultimately succeed. Now, companies with high engagement have a consistent attitude to the importance of those tenets. They don't make allowances. Action is taken when the values are not being displayed, as well as celebrated when they are evidenced. The quickest way to undermine the benefit your values can bring is to show that they're not important by allowing anti-value behavior to go unchecked. It sends a message to everyone that these are just words on a piece of paper, but they're optional and not really anything of value. It also undermines the trust employees have in the company, individuals, and the messages that are put out. In companies with high engagement and high levels of organizational integrity, these things are measured and talked about with the same rigor as the financial and other traditional tangible measures. And it's not a part-time one-off message either. The job isn't done after a rousing launch. It's a constant long-term commitment if you want to have them live and breathe in your organization for everyone to get the associated benefits. But also, and this always sounds daft when I talk to people about this, you have to choose values that work for your organization. Another big mistake I see companies make is in copying or trying to copy someone else's values. Sometimes they've seen someone else's values, and it's usually a successful company, and they think they look good or sound good and they've worked for that company, so we'll just use theirs and we'll get the same effect. Big mistake. I mean, having the right values is about putting the behaviors in place that will help your employees work in the right way to deliver your objectives in the manner that fits the desired image for your company. What's right for one isn't necessarily right for all. And your values, if you choose them correctly, can also set you apart from your competition. And this is something that businesses often forget when choosing or setting their values. The right values are also another way to help you find a deeper connection with your customers, who will end up liking why you do what you do and the way you do what you do, not just what you do as a result. And they can help move you away from being seen as just a commodity and therefore competing solely on price. The words you choose are equally important. Make sure they actually sound like you and represent you authentically. Don't just lob in popular words or words you think you have to have, like, I don't know, integrity, because everybody has that. Really? I mean, if you're working in a corrupt sector, then it might be a good word to use, but normally what's highlighting that you can be trusted and are open and honest as a specific trait for your business actually adding for you and your employees? Surely acting with integrity is considered a hygiene factor by most people, be you an employee or a customer. And values are not hygiene factors. They are the guides that help create what it feels to work like around here. And that's the thing at the center of all enabling and successful workplace cultures. And also the reason why so many value launches die shortly after they've been launched is because the business hasn't successfully transferred ownership for them to all its employees. Now, to effectively achieve this, you have to involve employees from the start to help validate the initial thinking behind the values that the company wants to choose. And that way, you'll get an early sense of what really resonates and what doesn't, what's going to add value and what won't. But the real trick to transferring ownership for your values is to turn them into or relate them to relevant, observable behaviors for every employee. But beware. I don't know about you, but I don't know too many adults who like being told how to behave. So if you dictate what their behaviors that will deliver the values are going to be, don't expect them to be adopted overnight. However, if you take the values and ask your teams to determine, communicate, and commit to their own ownable, observable behaviors that truly affect the delivery of the values in their everyday world, then you're much more likely to transfer ownership and have values that are living, breathing, and adding real value to your business and your employees' daily lives. So look, these are the 4 proven enablers of employee engagement. How would you rate yourself in these areas currently? What sort of job have you got to do to increase the levels of employee engagement in your business following the last 18 months? And where do you or should you begin to start? Well, look, here's my top 5 things to have a go at to start to look at improving the levels of employee engagement in your business. If you do nothing else, have a go at these, and I promise things will start to improve. Firstly, take a look at your purpose, vision, and mission. Do they clearly tell that strategic story of where the business is going now? Do they put the employee at the heart of that story so they can understand how they play their part in its success? Come back to purpose. People spend so much of their lives at work, we owe it to them to add meaning to that work or risk making their lives feel meaningless. Who wants that? Find and explain the bigger reason behind what the business does that resonates with your people and helps them see how they are contributing to that every day. And you will visibly see the difference in many of your people. Number two, a well-run engagement survey is still a very useful thing. It will give you a benchmark of where you are currently with engagement and help you see the progress you're making and where focus is required. But it needs more than a survey backed up by some pulse surveys throughout the year to add real benefit to the employees in the company. If you are going to ask questions, you have to respond to the answers. Done badly, engagement surveys can actually harm engagement as they end up being seen rather cynically rather than as a useful exercise. And today, these tools need to form part of a much more fluid understanding of engagement, driven by a more informal and regular amount of contact and conversation between employee and manager. And this will include regular one-to-ones that cover personal things, deliveries of the value, what each party really requires from each other to be working at their best, as well as tracking progress against tasks and objectives. Just the download of the task list is not really what we're talking about here. At number three, never underestimate the power of showing that your employees matter and are significant. The simplest gesture of hello as you walk through the factory or past the desk can make a big difference. Make an effort to get to know the person and to intentionally build relationships between people. Be generous with your praise too. And remember, praise is at its most effective when it's unexpected, when it's genuine, done in public and delivered by peers. At number four, the foundation of any high-performing, highly engaged team is trust. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni backs this up beautifully, yet many managers still focus on outcomes and results first without building up a stable foundation of trust. Teams will only ever go on to produce great results on a sustainable basis if they first established a culture of trust. How are you helping your managers manage for trust? And this will include things like helping them with how to recognize excellence, intentionally build relationships, sharing information broadly, and of course, being comfortable showing some vulnerability. And finally, take the opportunity you now have to re-examine your company values. When I'm helping businesses do this sort of thing, we'll consider many things and take a look at stuff like, have things changed over the last 18 months and how and why? Are the values really reflective of the type of business that they want to be and need to be? Do they add value to the employees in the business? And if so, how? How are they doing that? And do they set you apart from the competition? Do they sound like you? Are they backed up by ownable behaviors that have been designed by the people you're expecting to behave in this way? In my opinion, it's better to change them now and have them mean something and add value rather than have something in place because we always have that's not doing any good at all. We've seen the positive results of bringing more communication, involvement, and humanity into business of late. But in our quest to get back to normal, just check that normal really works for everyone. Or can we all do a bit better? And look, and those are my 5 tips for improving employee engagement from today. I hope you found all of this information useful and informative. And if you have, and we've got the time, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks for listening.
Brilliant, Andy. I absolutely love that. You know, what you were saying is always true to my very heart, and I really love engaging with you, and I love engaging with my team. And I think we all have lessons to learn from it, because you know, engagement is such a big, powerful word. But if it's not done properly, it can be, you know, the biggest flop that there is going. You know, engagement needs to be meaningful, and it needs to come from the belly, and it needs to come from the heart. And you know, you have to have like-minded people who share that same value. And I love what you talked about, talking about your why, because if you don't understand what your why is, you don't know what the what is, and you don't know what the how is. So my team know that I'm always talking about, why do we do what we do? Why do I get out of bed in the morning to do what I want to do? Why do I want to be so passionate about what I do? And then I sometimes feel that they're all rolling their eyes at me, because thinking, oh, here she goes again, because she's got so much passion and drive. But I absolutely believe in it. You know, if you have it, it's an energy that passes on to your team, and it is not something that just happens overnight. It is something that you know, goes, it takes time, and it's not just a one-time wonder to, you know, give that bar of chocolate and, you know, say well done everybody. You know, it's about that consistent praise, and keeping at it all the time. So I absolutely love that, and I can talk to you for hours, as you know, in engagement. And but of course, you know, for our listeners, I hope you found that really, really helpful, insightful. And of course, you know, Andy has got some fantastic podcasts. Andy, do you want to share with our listeners where they could hear some more about what you've got to share on,
Yeah, of course.
Sticky from the Inside?
Yeah, I mean, Sticky from the Inside is the name of the podcast. It's available on all the major platforms, so Apple, Spotify, Google, and some of the weirder ones too. So just look for Sticky from the Inside. Please subscribe and send me a comment, whatever you like. There's a whole bunch of social media that goes behind the podcast too, on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and all that good stuff. You can check out my website at bizjuicer.com. And if you feel the need to have a chat on email, then just get me at andy@bizjuicer.com. It's a silly name, but I use it everywhere, so it should be easy to remember.
Fantastic, that's great. And of course, you know, to our listeners, you know, if you didn't get any of that, you know, do get in contact with us, and we will be more than happy to put you in contact with Andy. You know, Andy can really make a big difference in helping you as a business owner, as a line manager, to get all of this in place. You know, our ethos here at HR for UK, you don't have to do these things on your own. You just need to be get in contact with us so that we can help you to help your businesses. So, you know, again, as I mentioned earlier on, the handout is available, but it will go out with these slides. Sorry, this recording of this webinar, and you know, I do hope that you have found that helpful. Andy, thank you. I am now just going to turn, and no questions have come in, so I think you have blown everybody's mind with what they are going to be doing, and hopefully we'll get some more sort of offline in, which we will of course pass your way. But as we get to that come where we are in, you know, we're coming to the end of August. The furlough scheme, which got us all started on these webinars way back in April of last year, is finally coming to an end. The furlough scheme, we are in the last leg of it. It winds down with that last piece of a furlough payment, which will be payable the 30th of September. We know that the coronavirus job retention scheme subsidises wages for employees who are on furlough. We know that that's coming to an end, and the scheme, you know, has required employers to start contributing. We saw that contribution start in July, and we've got this last step change with the contribution of 20% from employers, you know, being payable from the 1st of August through to the end of September. Of course, don't forget that your employees will always receive 80% of their wages, but of course the government grant that you can claim, that has dropped down to 60%. which means that you as an employer will need to top up and pay that extra 20%. And of course, you will also be required to pay those national insurance contributions and the pension contributions. And of course, with that a reduction with the government grant, the cap of that payment has also reduced. So the cap for September is £1,875. But we also know that the very big true step change that is going to be happening is from the 1st of October, where that comfort on having that government support scheme will completely come to an end, where no more grants will be available to businesses and the employer will need to pay 100% of salary, their full salary, before we entered into furlough agreements to agree that reduced salary, regardless of whether an employee is working or not. So this is where employers must really be looking at what do they need to do next. You know, what does it mean to their businesses having that furlough scheme come to an end? And you need to make those early assessments so that you can make and take those necessary steps that you have to take. But of course, we've said all along, HR for UK, we are your trusted HR business partner. And if you need help, guidance or support, even if it's just for a friendly chat to ask how can you get through this next stage, how can we help you, do get in touch. You know the details. It's www.hrforuk.com, or send us an email at info@hrforuk.com, or pick up the phone and give us a call on 01455 444 222. And of course, you know, if you're going through that boom place stage, you are wanting to get your employees engaged, of course we have Andy, who is best placed to be able to help you, support you to put something in place. It doesn't have to be from scratch. You may want to start from scratch because of course things have changed over the last 18 months, but do know that there is that support that is there for you. Don't struggle on your own and don't feel that you can't ask the question. Of course, HR for UK, we can help you with other needs. We can support you with pensions and payroll. We can support you with training, which may coincide with something that may come out of employee engagement surveys. And of course, our Kickstart scheme. We have got our own Kickstart who have been an absolute joy to have in the business. They are making such a difference. They are making a change. So why don't you use the government scheme and get a Kickstart in your business today? If there are no more questions from anybody else, that is going to be me. I'm going to wrap it up. But of course, you know, don't feel because we are running, you know, we are closing off the webinar. We are always here to help and support you. One last quick round on where you can get in contact with us. Our website, www.hrforuk.com. Telephone number 01455 444 222. Or drop us an email at info@hrforuk.com. And that's it from me, and that's it from Andy. Thank you very much, everybody, and that's the end of our webinars. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Bye
Angela.
for now. Thanks, Andy.